If you are a high achiever, you have a secret. You are constantly stressed, but you hide it well. You are the one who is always on, always pushing, always delivering, but underneath that polished exterior, your nervous system is screaming. You know you need to deal with the stress, but here is the problem. The way most people try to cope with stress actually makes their burnout worse. They reach for the quick fixes, the temporary escapes, the habits that feel good in the moment but leave them more depleted and more anxious in the long run. I know this because I used to be a master of these destructive habits. As an emergency room doctor, I thought a glass of wine after a 16-hour shift was my reward, my way of unwinding. I thought scrolling through my phone until 2 a.m. was my only chance to decompress. I thought pushing through exhaustion with sheer willpower was a sign of strength. I was wrong. These habits were not coping mechanisms. They were slow, self-inflicted wounds that led me straight into a devastating burnout. I'm Dr. Emma Richardson, and after spending 25 years in the most stressful environment imaginable, I now dedicate my life to teaching high achievers how to move from a state of chronic stress to one of sustainable resilience. Today, I am going to expose the 3 worst habits that are secretly fueling your burnout, and then I'm going to give you the 3 best neuroscience-backed habits to replace them. These aren't just theoretical ideas. These are the precise tools that send a direct signal to your brain, telling it to switch off the stress response and turn on the healing process. If you can eliminate the worst and implement the best, you will not only say goodbye to stress, but you will unlock a level of energy and focus you didn't know was possible. Let's start with the 3 worst habits that are destroying your nervous system and accelerating your burnout. The first worst habit is avoidance through distraction. This is the habit of constantly reaching for something external to numb the internal discomfort of stress. For most people, this looks like endless scrolling on social media, binge-watching television or playing video games for hours. It feels like a break, but it is actually a profound form of emotional avoidance. When you are stressed, your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and your brain is trying desperately to process the day's events and find a solution. By constantly distracting yourself, you are actively preventing your brain from completing the stress cycle. You are essentially trapping the stress hormones in your body, which then leads to a state of chronic, low-grade anxiety and physical tension. The temporary dopamine hit you get from the distraction is immediately followed by a crash, leaving you feeling more anxious, more guilty, and more depleted than before. This is what I call the stress distraction crash cycle, and it is a one-way ticket to chronic burnout. You are not unwinding. You are simply postponing the necessary emotional and physiological processing of your stress, and that unprocessed stress accumulates in your body as tension, chronic headaches, and deep exhaustion. The problem is that your brain is wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So the instant gratification of the quick distraction is incredibly appealing, but it is a false promise that steals your future peace. To illustrate this, consider a client I worked with, a brilliant architect named Marcus. Marcus would come home after a 12-hour day and immediately collapse onto the couch, spending the next 4 hours scrolling through design blogs and social media. He felt like he was relaxing, but he was actually just keeping his brain in a state of passive, overstimulated consumption. His mind was never truly quiet and his body was never truly at rest. We discovered that the moment he stopped scrolling, the anxiety about his work and his life would rush in. The scrolling was a defense mechanism, a way to avoid the difficult but necessary task of simply sitting with his own thoughts. The neuroscience shows that this kind of passive consumption keeps your brain's reward centers firing, but it prevents the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function and self-regulation, from doing the deep work of recovery. You are not giving your brain a rest. You are just giving it a different, less productive job. This constant overstimulation, even when passive, keeps your brain in a state of hyperarousal, making it impossible to truly switch off and enter the restorative stages of sleep. The irony is that the thing he used to relax was the very thing keeping him wired and tired. The second worst habit is self-medication with depressants. This is the habit of using substances like alcohol, excessive caffeine, or even over-the-counter sleep aids to force your body into a state it is not ready for. Alcohol is the most common culprit here. Many high achievers use a glass of wine or a cocktail to take the edge off after a long day. While alcohol is a depressant and can make you feel sleepy, it severely disrupts your sleep architecture. It prevents you from entering the deep, restorative REM sleep that your brain desperately needs to process emotions, consolidate memories, and repair itself. You might pass out, but you are not truly resting. The quality of your sleep is what matters most for burnout recovery, and alcohol destroys that quality. Similarly, relying on massive amounts of caffeine to push through the afternoon slump only further dysregulates your nervous system. It forces your body into a false state of fight or flight, burning through your precious energy reserves by artificially stimulating the release of adrenaline. This habit is a biological lie. You are trying to chemically force your body to do something it is not ready for, and the long-term cost is a completely depleted nervous system that can no longer regulate itself naturally. Think of a client like Sarah, a successful marketing executive. Sarah believed her 2 glasses of wine every night were essential for her to relax. She would fall asleep quickly, but she would wake up feeling unrefreshed, often around 3 in the morning, with her mind racing. This is a classic sign of alcohol disrupting the sleep cycle. As the alcohol is metabolized, it creates a rebound effect, causing a surge of adrenaline and cortisol that wakes you up. Sarah was essentially putting her body through a mini stress test every single night. When we removed the alcohol, her sleep immediately deepened and she woke up feeling genuinely rested for the first time in years. The key takeaway here is that anything you use to artificially suppress or stimulate your nervous system is creating a debt that your body will eventually demand to be paid. True rest comes from regulation, not from chemical suppression. Furthermore, the reliance on caffeine creates a vicious cycle. You use caffeine to overcome the fatigue caused by poor sleep, and the caffeine then contributes to the poor sleep, deepening the cycle of exhaustion and dependency. Breaking this cycle is a fundamental step in reclaiming your natural energy. The third worst habit is toxic positivity and emotional suppression. This is the habit of telling yourself, "I'm fine," when you are clearly not. High achievers often feel they must maintain an image of invincibility. They suppress their frustration, their exhaustion, and their fear, believing that showing any sign of struggle is a weakness. But emotions are not optional, they are data. When you suppress an emotion, you don't make it go away. You simply push it down into your body where it manifests as physical tension, chronic pain, and anxiety. The neuroscience is clear. Emotional suppression requires a massive amount of energy from your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for focus and decision-making. By constantly fighting your own feelings, you are draining the very energy you need to do your best work. This habit creates a dangerous disconnect between your mind and your body, making it impossible to recognize the true signs of burnout until it is too late. I worked with a brilliant surgeon, a Dr. Thomas, who was the epitome of this habit. He was famous for his calm demeanor, never showing stress or frustration, even in the most chaotic operating room. But outside of work, he was constantly irritable and suffered from severe digestive issues. He was suppressing all the intense emotions of his job, and his body was paying the price. His digestive system, which is heavily influenced by the vagus nerve, was in a constant state of low-grade fight or flight. When we started working on simple emotional release techniques, his digestive issues began to clear up. The lesson here is that your body keeps the score. Suppressed. Emotions do not disappear. They become physical symptoms. True strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the courage to acknowledge and process your feelings in a healthy way. This suppression is a form of self-betrayal. You are telling yourself that your authentic experience is unacceptable, which leads to a deep underlying sense of shame and isolation. This shame then requires even more energy to suppress, creating a feedback loop of emotional exhaustion. The goal is not to eliminate negative emotions, but to allow them to flow through you so they can be processed and released. Now that we have exposed the 3 worst habits, let's talk about the 3 best habits that will strategically restore your energy and rewire your nervous system for calm. These are the habits that send a clear, undeniable signal of safety to your brain. The first best habit is the 60-second vagal break. This is the direct antidote to the stress distraction crash cycle. When you feel stress rising, your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight system, is hitting the gas pedal. The vagal brake is a simple, immediate technique to hit the brakes on that response. It directly stimulates your vagus nerve, which is the superhighway of your parasympathetic nervous system, the system of rest and repair. This nerve is the key to calming your entire system. To practice this, I want you to use the 4-7-8 breathing technique. Find a quiet place or just close your eyes at your desk. Inhale quietly through your nose for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 7. Then exhale completely through your mouth with a whoosh sound for a count of 8. Repeat this cycle for just 60 seconds. The long exhale is the key. It physically slows your heart rate and sends a message to your brain that the threat has passed. This is not about distracting yourself from stress. It is about physically and chemically changing your body's response to stress. The extended exhale signals to your brainstem that you are safe, because you cannot be running from a predator if you are taking a long, slow breath out. I used to do this in the trauma bay between patients. It is a powerful, portable tool that you can use anywhere, anytime, to immediately shift your state from panic to calm. The beauty of this habit is its simplicity and its immediate biological impact. It is a direct, non-negotiable conversation with your nervous system. You are essentially hacking your own biology to induce a state of calm. This technique is so effective because it bypasses the thinking, worrying part of your brain and goes straight to the brainstem, the ancient part of your brain that controls your automatic functions. The second best habit is scheduled disconnection and deep play. This is the antidote to avoidance through distraction and self-medication. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, you're going to schedule intentional time for activities that engage your brain in a low-stakes, non-productive way. This is what I call deep play. Deep play is any activity that fully engages your attention without the pressure of a deadline, a goal, or a performance metric. It could be playing a musical instrument, painting, gardening, or even just playing a board game with your family. The key is that it must be an activity that you do purely for the joy of it with no expectation of a result. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. Deep play activates the default mode network in your brain, which is responsible for creativity, self-reflection, and problem solving. When you are constantly on, this network never gets a chance to do its best work. By scheduling disconnection and engaging in deep play, you are giving your brain the necessary downtime to process information, consolidate learning, and restore its creative energy. This is not a waste of time. It is a strategic investment in your cognitive function. I had a client, a financial analyst named Sarah, who replaced her evening wine with an hour of playing the piano. She found that the focused, low-stakes activity was far more restorative than the wine, and her ability to solve complex problems at work improved dramatically. The focused non-work activity provides a gentle yet powerful form of mental rest that passive consumption simply cannot deliver. Furthermore, the act of engaging in a hobby releases dopamine in a healthy, sustainable way, unlike the quick, addictive hit from social media. This helps to reset your brain's reward system, making you less reliant on the quick fixes that lead to burnout. This habit is about reclaiming your inner child and allowing yourself to be fully present in a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, which is a powerful signal of safety to your nervous system. The third best habit is the daily emotional check-in and release. This is the antidote to toxic positivity and emotional suppression. You must create a daily habit of acknowledging and processing your emotions rather than fighting them. This habit is about creating a safe space for your feelings to exist so they don't get trapped in your body. To practice this, I want you to set aside 5 minutes every evening for an emotional check-in. You can do this by journaling or simply by speaking your feelings out loud to yourself or a trusted partner. The key is to use the phrase, I am feeling X because Y. For example, I'm feeling frustrated because I had to redo that report, or I'm feeling anxious because of the looming deadline. The simple act of naming the emotion and linking it to its cause is a powerful cognitive tool that moves the emotion from the reactive, primal part of your brain to the rational, problem-solving part of your brain. This process is called affect labeling, and studies show that it actually calms the amygdala, the fear center of your brain. Once you have named it, you can release it. You can do this through a simple physical release like shaking your hands, doing a few stretches, or even just a big sigh. This habit teaches your nervous system that it is safe to feel and that processing emotions is a natural, healthy part of being a high achiever. Let me share the story of another client, a brilliant CEO named Elena. Elena was a master of toxic positivity. She believed that as the leader, she always had to be the most optimistic person in the room. This led to her suppressing all her doubts and fears, which manifested as severe insomnia. We introduced the daily emotional check-in. Every night, she would write down 3 things she was genuinely worried about and 3 things she was genuinely grateful for. This simple act of balanced acknowledgement allowed her brain to process the day's emotional load before she went to sleep. Within a month, her insomnia was gone. She realized that by acknowledging her fears, she wasn't making them stronger. She was taking away their power to control her in the middle of the night. This habit is the ultimate act of self-compassion and self-regulation. It is the practice of radical honesty with yourself, which is the first step toward true healing. Your journey out of stress and burnout is not about finding more willpower. It is about replacing destructive habits with restorative ones. It is about strategic, neuroscience-backed choices that honor your biology. You must stop trying to tough it out and start giving your body the signals of safety and rest that it desperately needs. You have the power to change your story, not by working harder, but by working differently. I want to hear from you now. Which of the 3 worst habits are you going to eliminate today? And which of the 3 best habits are you going to implement in its place? Is it finally putting down the phone and picking up a hobby? Is it replacing the evening drink with the vagal break? Or is it giving yourself permission to feel your feelings with the emotional check-in? Share your commitment in the comments below. We are building a community here of people who are committed to living better, not just working harder, and your voice is an important part of that. Let's support each other in this process of recovery and rediscovery. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. There are so many people out there who are suffering in silence, thinking they are the only ones who feel this way. Your share could be the very thing that helps them realize they're not alone and that there is a way out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. We have a lot more deep dives into the science of burnout and the path to recovery coming your way. In our next video, I'm going to share the single most powerful morning routine that will prime your brain for focus and calm, guaranteeing you a productive and stress-free day. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for your courage in facing these difficult truths. I'm Dr. Emma Richardson, and I want you to remember your well-being is the foundation of your success. You have the power to change your story. You have the power to reclaim your life. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. And never forget that you are worth the effort it takes to heal. I'll see you in the next video.